when a young girl tried to pet a police dog. What he sensed on her hand shocked the officer to his core. The highly trained German Shepherd didn't just back away. He immediately alerted, detecting something on her hands that sent chills down the officer's spine. What started as a casual interaction in a busy park quickly spiraled into a race against time. With the shocking substance on her tiny palm threatening more lives than anyone could have imagined. Officer Mark Reynolds adjusted his uniform as he stepped out of the patrol car, his loyal partner Rex eagerly waiting at his side. The 5-year-old German Shepherd's alert eyes scanned the park perimeter, a habit ingrained through thousands of hours of specialized training. Just another Tuesday, Mark thought, watching families enjoy the spring afternoon at West Side Park. For 3 years, Mark and Rex had been inseparable, partners in every sense of the word. Rex wasn't just any police dog. He was among the department's elite, with a detection accuracy rate that bordered on supernatural. His nose could identify over 30 different substances, from narcotics to explosives, often in concentrations so minute they'd be invisible to even the most sophisticated equipment. "Come on, boy," Mark said, clipping on Rex's lead as they began their routine patrol through the park. Children pointed and parents smiled as the impressive K9 unit passed by. It was community policing at its finest. Visible, approachable, yet always vigilant. Rex walked with purpose, his training evident in every calculated step. His ears occasionally twitched at the sounds of playing children, but his focus remained unwavering. This was work, and Rex was nothing if not professional. Mark checked his watch, just 2 more hours until the end of their shift. The day had been quiet. A lost child reunited with her mother, a minor traffic incident near the park entrance, and several community members stopping to chat. Nothing out of the ordinary. Little did Officer Mark know, this ordinary day would lead to a discovery that would leave him completely stunned. A high-pitched voice cut through the ambient park noise. "Officer, officer, can I pet your dog, please?" Mark turned to see a small girl, no more than 8 years old, bouncing excitedly on her toes. Her blonde hair was pulled into slightly lopsided pigtails, and her blue dress was smudged with what looked like ice cream at the hem. Behind her, a few yards away, a woman, presumably her mother, chatted animatedly on her phone, occasionally glancing toward her daughter. "Hi there," Mark said, offering a friendly smile. "What's your name?" "Lily," she replied, her eyes never leaving Rex. "I love dogs. My mom says we can't have one because of our apartment rules, but I get to pet all the dogs at the park. I keep a list in my notebook of all the dogs I meet." Mark knelt down to Lily's level, keeping a firm grip on Rex's lead. He'd done this hundreds of times. The standard, interaction with curious children, fascinated by his 4-legged partner. It was part of community policing that he genuinely enjoyed, these moments of connection that reminded him why he'd joined the force in the first place. "Well, Lily, this is Rex. He's not exactly like other dogs. He's a police dog, which means he's working right now." Mark explained gently. "Police dogs have special training, and we have to be careful about who pets them while they're on duty. They're trained to protect me and to look for certain things that might be dangerous." Lily's face fell slightly, but she nodded with unexpected seriousness. "Because he's a hero dog, right? My teacher told us about police dogs. They catch bad guys and find lost people. She showed us a video of a police dog jumping over a really tall fence, and it was so cool." "Does Rex jump over fences too?" Mark chuckled. "That's right. Rex is very good at his job. And yes, he can jump pretty high when he needs to." He can also track people by their scent and find things that are hidden. Rex sat perfectly still beside Mark, his posture impeccable, ears perked forward as if he understood he was the topic of conversation. His disciplined demeanor was a testament to the thousands of hours of training they'd completed together. A gentle breeze rustled through the park, carrying the scents of fresh-cut grass and food from nearby vendors. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the playground where children climbed and swung, their laughter providing a cheerful soundtrack to the day. Several passers-by slowed their pace, smiling at the sight of the officer engaging with the enthusiastic little girl. After a moment's consideration, Mark made the judgment call he'd made countless times before with well-behaved children. Rex was exceptionally stable around civilians, particularly kids. These positive interactions were important. They helped build trust between the community and law enforcement, something Mark valued deeply. Tell you what, Lily, if you stand very still and let Rex sniff your hand first, you can give him a quick pet. But you have to follow my instructions exactly, okay? It's important that we respect Rex's training. Lily's eyes widened with delight, a gap-toothed smile spreading across her freckled face. I promise, I'll be super careful. I'm really good with animals. Mrs. Peterson at school lets me help feed the class hamster because I'm so gentle. That's perfect, Mark said with an encouraging nod. Being gentle is exactly what we need. Rex appreciates good manners. A couple walking by slowed their pace to watch the interaction, smiling at the scene. Mark was used to this. His K-9 unit often drew attention during their patrols. Most people respected the work they did, and these small moments of connection were important for community relations. Hold out your hand slowly, palm up, and let him come to you, Mark instructed, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the routine nature of the interaction. Don't reach for his head right away. Let him sniff you first, just like you would with any dog you're meeting for the first time. Lily nodded solemnly and extended her small hand, palm facing upward as instructed. Her fingers trembled slightly with excitement. She bit her lower lip in concentration, determined to follow the officer's instructions perfectly. That's it. Nice and slow, Mark encouraged, loosening his grip on Rex's lead just slightly to allow the dog to approach the girl's outstretched hand. Rex's disciplined demeanor shifted subtly as he leaned forward to investigate Lily's hand, a standard procedure he'd performed countless times before. His powerful nose, capable of detecting scents at concentrations as low as parts per trillion, hovered just inches from the girl's small palm. But when Lily extended her hand toward Rex, something happened that would change multiple lives forever. In an instant, the routine interaction transformed into something neither Mark nor anyone else in the peaceful park could have anticipated. Rex's behavior changed in an instant. The transformation was so sudden and dramatic that Mark's years of training immediately kicked into high gear. One moment, Rex was the picture of controlled discipline. The next, his entire body tensed, his ears pinned back, and a low, urgent growl rumbled from deep in his chest. His tail, which had been relaxed moments before, now stood rigid, and his eyes fixed intently on Lily's outstretched hand. "Whoa, Rex. Easy, boy," Mark said, instinctively tightening his grip on the lead while placing his other hand protectively in front of Lily, who had jumped back in surprise. The movement was smooth, practiced, a reaction honed through countless training scenarios, though none quite like this. Rex wasn't being aggressive. This was something entirely different. This was an alert posture Mark had seen hundreds of times during training exercises, but never in such an unexpected situation. The German Shepherd's nose worked furiously, and he began the distinctive pawing at the ground that indicated he detected something significant. His breathing changed too, becoming more rapid and focused as he processed whatever scent had triggered his training. "What's wrong with him? Is he mad at me?" Lily asked, her voice small and uncertain. Her excited smile had vanished, replaced by a quivering lower lip. She clutched her hands close to her chest, eyes wide with confusion and the beginning traces of fear. The other children nearby had stopped their play, watching the scene unfold with curious expressions. No, he's not mad," Mark assured her quickly, though his mind was racing through possibilities. "Rex is trying to tell me something important. You didn't do anything wrong." He maintained a calm, reassuring tone despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. Years on the force had taught him that keeping civilians calm was half the battle in any unexpected situation. The afternoon sun continued to shine pleasantly overhead, casting dappled shadows through the oak trees that lined this section of the park. The contrast between the idyllic setting and the sudden tension of the moment wasn't lost on Mark. A couple pushing a stroller slowed their pace, watching the interaction with curious expressions. A jogger paused, removing his earbuds. Mark's training had prepared him for this moment. When Rex alerted, you paid attention. The dog's detection capabilities far exceeded human senses, and his accuracy rate was near perfect. In their 3 years together, Rex had never given a false positive, not once. If Rex was alerting, there was a reason, and Mark's mind rapidly cycled through the possibilities, none of them particularly comforting. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Procedure dictated certain steps now, but he needed to balance protocol with sensitivity. This was a child, after all, in a public place. Whatever was happening, he needed to handle it delicately. "Lily, can I ask you something?" Mark kept his voice casual despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. He crouched down again, bringing himself to her eye level while maintaining control of Rex, who continued his alert behavior. "What were you doing before you came over to say hello to us?" The little girl looked down at her hands, then back up at Mark with innocent eyes. A smudge of dirt marked her left cheek, and her sneakers were scuffed from play. "I was just playing with my friends. And then I had a popsicle. Cherry. It was really sticky, so I washed my hands at the water fountain." She pointed to the drinking fountain about 20 yards away, where another child was currently getting a drink. Mark nodded, maintaining his calm exterior while his mind processed the situation. Rex continued his alert behavior, his attention fixed unwaveringly on Lily's hands. The dog's training was specific. He was certified to detect narcotics, certain explosives, and several chemical precursors used in illegal manufacturing. The question was, which category of substances was he alerting to? And how had it gotten onto this child's hands? And before that? Did you touch anything unusual today? Maybe something at home this morning, or something someone gave you. Mark kept his tone conversational, as though they were simply chatting about her day, though his eyes carefully tracked her reactions. Lily's brow furrowed in concentration, her small fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blue dress. I helped my uncle in his garage before we came to the park. He's staying with us for a while. He lets me hand him tools when he works on stuff." Her face brightened momentarily. "He said I was the best helper he ever had. He's fixing something important, but it's a secret project." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "He said not to tell Mom about the special powders because she wouldn't understand. It's for science." Mark felt a chill run down his spine despite the warm afternoon. The word powders in conjunction with Rex's alert, was setting off every alarm in his professional toolkit. He glanced around, locating his radio on his shoulder, calculating his next move. Protocol dictated calling for backup, but he needed more information first. Jumping to conclusions could create unnecessary panic. A woman hurried over, the same one Mark had noticed on the phone earlier. Her hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and she wore yoga pants and a light sweater despite the warmth of the day. "Lily, what did I tell you about bothering people?" She placed protective hands on her daughter's shoulders, eyeing Rex with apprehension. "I'm so sorry, officer. She's just crazy about dogs. I hope she hasn't been a nuisance." Mark shifted into a different mode now, balancing his law enforcement instincts with the need to keep the situation calm. Years of experience had taught him that how he handled the next few minutes would be crucial. "No bother at all, ma'am. I'm Officer Reynolds, and this is Rex." He gestured to his badge. "May I ask your name?" "Sarah Collins," she replied, her expression a mixture of confusion and growing concern as she noticed Rex's unusual behavior. Her eyes darted between the dog, her daughter, and Mark. "Is everything okay? Your dog seems agitated." The ambient sounds of the park, children laughing, birds calling, the distant hum of traffic, seemed to fade into the background as Mark focused on the situation at hand. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying with it the scent of freshly mown grass and the sweet aroma from a nearby vendor selling caramel corn. "Mrs. Collins, Rex is a specially trained detection dog," Mark explained carefully. "He's currently alerting to something on Lily's hands. It's probably nothing to worry about. But I'd like to ask a few more questions, if that's all right." He deliberately kept his language vague, avoiding terms that might cause unnecessary alarm to others within earshot. Sarah's face paled slightly, her casual demeanor evaporating. "What do you mean, alerting? Alerting to what?" Her grip on Lily's shoulders tightened, and she pulled her daughter a fraction closer. The protective instinct was evident in her posture. Mark maintained his professional composure, though his mind was already mapping out next steps, contingencies, procedures that might soon need to be followed. "That's what I'd like to figure out. Rex is trained to detect various substances, some harmless, some not. Has Lily been anywhere unusual today? You mentioned an uncle's garage?" The atmosphere had shifted. What had begun as a cheerful encounter in a sunny park had transformed into something tense and uncertain. Other park-goers began to notice, some slowing their pace to observe the interaction between the police officer and the mother-daughter pair. A man walking his golden retriever gave them a wide berth, curious but respectful of what appeared to be official police business. Sarah's grip on Lily's shoulders tightened slightly. A flash of something, recognition, worry, crossed her features before she composed herself. "My brother-in-law is staying with us for a few weeks. He's between jobs." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He's had some trouble finding his footing lately, the economy and all that." She waved her hand dismissively, but Mark noted the tension in her gesture. "Lily, honey, what were you doing in Uncle Dean's garage? I thought I told you to stay out of there." Sarah's voice had taken on a strained quality, hovering somewhere between maternal concern and growing anxiety. Lily looked up at her mother, confusion evident in her expression. "I was just helping. Uncle Dean said it was okay. He said I was a good assistant." Her small fingers twisted together nervously. "He showed me his chemistry set. It's like the one at school, but bigger, with real fire and everything. He wears a mask sometimes when he works with the special stuff." Mark felt his pulse quicken at this new information. A chemistry set with special stuff requiring protective equipment, combined with Rex's unmistakable alert, was painting a picture that grew more concerning by the moment. His right hand moved subtly closer to his radio, though he maintained his outwardly calm demeanor. "He said it was our secret game," Lily continued, oblivious to the growing tension. "Like a spy mission. That's why we have to be quiet when the packages come at night. Uncle Dean says we're entrepreneurs." She stumbled slightly over the unfamiliar word, pronouncing it carefully as if she'd been coached. Sarah's face had lost all color now. "Packages? What packages?" She looked from her daughter to Mark, a new fear dawning in her eyes, not just of what might be happening, but of what was being revealed in this public setting. Mark watched the interaction carefully, noting the mother's growing discomfort. Rex remained in alert mode, his training too ingrained to be distracted by the increasing number of onlookers or the tension in the air. The dog's focus remained unwavering, a living, breathing detection tool indicating that something was very wrong. "Mrs. Collins," Mark said, his voice low and serious now. "I need to know what Lily might have been exposed to in that garage. Rex doesn't make mistakes." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "In 3 years of service, he's never given a false alert. Whatever he's detecting on Lily's hands is real, and potentially serious." Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the park as if seeking an escape route. I don't know what Dean does in there. He keeps it locked most of the time." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My husband's been out of work for months. Dean offered to help with the rent if we gave him space for his business ventures. I didn't ask questions. I couldn't afford to." The implications of the situation were beginning to crystallize, and Mark felt the weight of responsibility settling firmly on his shoulders. What had started as a routine patrol had evolved into something potentially much more serious. All because a little girl wanted to pet a police dog. He made a decision, reaching slowly for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Reynolds. I need a supervisor and possibly hazmat to my location at West Side Park, near the Eastern Playground. K9 Rex has alerted to unknown substances on a minor. Situation is calm, but requires immediate attention." He kept his voice steady and professional, though his mind was already racing ahead to evacuation protocols if necessary. As he spoke into his radio, Mark maintained eye contact with Sarah, whose face had crumpled into an expression of dread and realization. Lily looked between them, sensing the gravity of the situation without fully understanding it. "Am I in trouble?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Did I do something bad?" Mark shook his head, offering a reassuring smile that belied the seriousness of the moment. "No, Lily. You didn't do anything wrong at all. In fact, you and Rex might have done something very important today." What Rex had detected on those small hands would soon set in motion a chain of events that would reach far beyond this peaceful park and this sunny afternoon. A cascade of consequences that would unravel an operation hidden behind the facade of a family garage, expose networks operating in the shadows of their quiet community, and ultimately test the bonds of a family caught in circumstances they never anticipated. But for now, as backup units acknowledged his call and began their response, Mark's focus remained on keeping a frightened mother and a confused little girl calm while maintaining the integrity of what was rapidly becoming a potential crime scene. The park continued its normal activities around them, a bubble of tension amid the serenity of an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The next hours would prove to be anything but ordinary. The response to Mark's call was swift and measured. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. their lights flashing but sirens silent, a tactical decision to avoid causing unnecessary panic in the crowded park. Sergeant Diane Mercer, a veteran officer with 20 years on the force, was first to approach, her experienced eyes quickly assessing the situation. She moved with the confident efficiency that had earned her respect throughout the department. Her salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform pristine despite the mid-afternoon heat. "Reynolds," she acknowledged with a nod. "Talk to me." Mark gave a concise briefing, his voice low enough that only those immediately present could hear. Rex alerted on the child's hands. According to her statement, she was helping her uncle in his garage this morning, handling special powders and witnessing what sounds like clandestine deliveries. The mother appears to have been unaware of the specific activities. As he spoke, Mark maintained his position, Rex sitting alertly by his side, still occasionally glancing toward Lily with professional interest. The German Shepherd's training had kicked in fully now. Once he'd made an alert, he understood they were in working mode, and his focus was unwavering. Mercer's expression remained neutral, though her eyes sharpened. She'd seen enough in her career to recognize the potential gravity of the situation. "Where's this garage located?" 1482 Oakwood Drive, Sarah supplied, her voice barely above a whisper. The color had not returned to her face, and she kept Lily pulled close to her side. Her fingers trembled slightly as she brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "My brother-in-law, Dean Harmon, has been staying with us for about 3 months now. He said he just needed time to get back on his feet after his divorce." Mercer nodded, making a note in her small pocket notebook. The leather cover was worn from years of use, the pages filled with the shorthand she'd developed over decades of police work. "Mrs. Collins, we're going to need to take some precautionary measures here. First, I'd like to have paramedics check Lily, just to make sure she hasn't been affected by whatever substances she may have handled." As if on cue, an ambulance pulled up at the park's entrance, its approach deliberately casual. 2 paramedics in blue uniforms gathered equipment and made their way toward the group. The male paramedic, a stocky man with a friendly face, carried a pediatric assessment kit. His partner, a woman with a tight ponytail and efficient movements, brought over a small case containing testing equipment. "Am I sick?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with growing fear. She clutched her mother's hand tighter, looking up at the uniformed adults surrounding her with increasing apprehension. "No, honey, it's just a checkup," Mercer said, her tone softening in the way it always did when she dealt with children. Like when the school nurse checks everyone for lice, just being extra careful. Mark watched as Mercer seamlessly took control of the scene. This was why she was one of the most respected sergeants in the department. Her ability to balance procedural thoroughness with human compassion. She had mentored dozens of younger officers, including Mark during his first years on the force, teaching them that effectiveness came not just from following protocol, but from understanding the human elements of every situation. The park continued its normal activities around them, though a small crowd of curious onlookers had begun to gather at a respectful distance. A young couple with a toddler diverted their path to avoid the cluster of police vehicles. An elderly man walking his terrier stopped to watch, concern evident on his weathered face. "Officer Chen," Mercer called to one of the newly arrived officers, a younger Asian American officer who had recently transferred from another precinct. "Please escort Mrs. Collins and her daughter to the paramedics." "Mrs. Collins, after Lily's been checked, Officer Chen will need to take a detailed statement from you." Officer Chen nodded, her movements precise and professional, as she gently guided mother and daughter toward the waiting paramedics. "This way, please." The paramedics are just going to make sure everything's okay. Sarah nodded numbly, allowing herself and Lily to be guided toward the ambulance. The paramedics, sensing the delicacy of the situation, greeted Lily with warm smiles and immediately engaged her with questions about her favorite cartoon characters as they began their assessment. "Do you like unicorns?" the female paramedic asked, showing Lily a colorful stethoscope with a unicorn charm dangling from it. "This is my special listening tool. Want to hear what your heart sounds like?" Lily's fear seemed to diminish slightly at this friendly approach, though she still kept a tight grip on her mother's hand. Mercer turned back to Mark, her expression shifting to one of focused determination. "Reynolds, I want you and Rex to stay on scene until the hazmat team arrives to test the residue. Detective Ortiz is en route. He'll want your observations firsthand." She lowered her voice further, ensuring their conversation remained private. "Narcotics is already very interested in this. There's been chatter about a new production operation in the area. This could be connected." Mark raised an eyebrow. "The meth lab they've been trying to locate for the past few months?" "Possibly. The chemical signatures they've been finding in street samples suggest a sophisticated operation, not your typical amateur cook." Mercer glanced toward the Collins family. "And if this Dean Harmon is involved, we need to move quickly. Once he realizes the child has been in contact with law enforcement, he might destroy evidence or worse, disappear." Mark nodded, maintaining his professional composure despite the surge of adrenaline. What had begun as a routine patrol might be breaking open a case the department had been building for months. He'd heard about the investigation in briefings, a new methamphetamine operation that was producing unusually pure product, with some chemical variations that suggested professional knowledge of chemistry. "I've already requested a patrol unit to do a casual drive-by of the residence," Mercer added. "No lights, no indication of interest. Just eyes on the location until we can get a warrant." The park's normal ambient sounds, children playing, dogs barking, the distant hum of traffic, continued around them, creating a surreal backdrop to the unfolding investigation. A group of teenagers had set up a volleyball net nearby, their laughter and calls creating a strange counterpoint to the serious conversation. Within 30 minutes, the park had transformed. Yellow caution tape cordoned off a section near the playground. Officers established a perimeter, calmly, explaining to curious onlookers that there was no danger, but asking them to move to other areas of the park. Parents gathered their children, some leaving altogether, others relocating to the far side of the green space, watching the police activity with a mixture of concern and curiosity. A nondescript van arrived, the mobile command unit, and Detective Victor Ortiz emerged, his weathered face set in determined lines. At 52, Ortiz was a legend in the department, with over 25 years in narcotics enforcement and a reputation for methodical, thorough investigations that resulted in solid convictions. His salt and pepper beard was neatly trimmed, and despite the casual clothes, khakis, and a navy polo shirt, he carried himself with unmistakable authority. "Reynolds." Ortiz greeted him with a firm handshake. "Mercer briefed me. This is potentially significant. Tell me exactly what happened with the girl." Mark recounted the encounter in precise detail. Rex's alert, Lily's statements about the garage activities, the mother's apparent surprise. He included every nuance he could remember from the conversation, knowing that in investigations like this, the smallest details often proved crucial. She specifically mentioned special powders and packages arriving at night. Ortiz confirmed, his dark eyes intent. "Yes, sir." And she said her uncle wears a mask sometimes when working with what she called the special stuff. She also mentioned fire being involved, possibly a heat source for chemical processes. Ortiz listened intently, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound notebook similar to Mercer's, but with tabs dividing different sections. The timing is interesting. We've been tracking unusual chemical purchases in the county for 3 months now. Precursors for methamphetamine production, but with some unusual variations. The quantities suggest a substantial operation. He glanced toward the ambulance, where Lily was now laughing, as a paramedic made a balloon animal from a latex glove. And now, we have a possible location. What about the family? Mark asked, watching Sarah Collins as she sat on a nearby bench, talking with Officer Chen. The mother seems genuinely shocked. We'll need to verify that, Ortiz replied, his tone neither accusatory nor trusting, simply professional. People can be very convincing when cornered. But my initial impression from your report suggests she may indeed be an unwitting participant. The husband's employment situation creates financial vulnerability that someone could easily exploit. A light breeze stirred the leaves of the oak trees overhead, providing momentary relief from the afternoon sun. In the distance, the ice cream vendor continued his rounds, his cheerful bell occasionally punctuating the serious conversation. What's the next step? Mark asked. We're securing a warrant for the Collins residence as we speak, with specific focus on the garage and any areas this Dean Harmon has access to. Ortiz's expression was grim. Based on the child's exposure and Rex's alert, we have sufficient probable cause. Judge Watkins is reviewing it now. He gestured toward the mobile command unit. We've already pulled property records and background on both the Collins family and Dean Harmon. Harmon has a record. Nothing major. Some possession charges from his 20s, a DUI 5 years ago. But he also has an interesting employment history. He worked as a lab technician for a pharmaceutical company until about 8 months ago when he was terminated. The company cites violation of protocols, but doesn't specify further. Mark raised an eyebrow. So he has the knowledge to set up a sophisticated operation. Potentially, and the contacts to distribute pharmaceutical-grade chemicals. Ortiz's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He checked it quickly. Tactical team is assembling at the station. They'll be ready to move once we have the warrant. The hazmat team arrived in full protective gear, another calculated risk in a public setting. Their appearance in yellow suits and respirators drew immediate attention, but it was a necessary precaution. They worked quickly to take samples from Lily's hands and clothing, their movements precise and methodical. We're using minimal equipment to avoid alarming the public, the lead technician explained to Ortiz. But we're taking all necessary precautions for the team and the subjects. If this is what we think it is, Ortiz continued to Mark, watching the hazmat team work, we could be looking at a significant manufacturing operation. The question is whether this Harmon character is a solo operator or part of a larger network. Mark's thoughts went to Sarah and Lily, a family potentially caught in the crossfire of something they hadn't chosen or understood. What about the Collins family? The father's unemployed, according to the mother. Ortiz nodded. We'll need to determine their level of involvement, if any. The mother's reaction suggests she may have been deliberately kept in the dark. But we'll need to verify that. Child Protective Services has been notified as a precaution, but if the parents aren't implicated, there's no reason the child can't remain in their custody. He paused, watching as a woman in business attire approached Officer Chen and Sarah Collins. That's Valerie Nunez from CPS now. She's good. Understands the balance between child safety and family preservation. She'll make an initial assessment and be present for any further questioning involving the child. The lead hazmat technician approached, his face shield raised. Sweat beaded on his forehead from the heat inside the protective gear. Preliminary tests are positive for methamphetamine residue with traces of phosphorus. We're also detecting some compounds we'll need to analyze further at the lab. Nothing immediately dangerous to others in the area, but definitely concerning for prolonged exposure. He handed Ortiz a preliminary report form. We've taken samples for full analysis. The child's exposure appears to be surface contact only. Her vital signs are normal, and she's not exhibiting any symptoms of chemical exposure. We've performed decontamination procedures as a precaution. Ortiz reviewed the form, his expression growing more serious. Phosphorus compounds are consistent with the chemical signature we've been tracking. This is looking more and more like our operation. His phone buzzed again. He checked the message and nodded to Mark. Warrants approved. Tactical team is assembling now for the approach to the residence. He paused, considering. Reynolds, I want you and Rex on this. If there are substances similar to what he alerted on here, his detection skills could be valuable. Mark felt a surge of professional pride, tempered by the seriousness of the situation. Rex had proven his worth countless times, but this could be their most significant case yet. We're ready. Good. We'll have a briefing at the station in 30 minutes. We're approaching this with full tactical protocol. If this is the lab we've been looking for, the subjects may be armed and will certainly be dangerous. Ortiz turned to Sergeant Mercer, who had been coordinating the scene management. Diane, I need you to oversee the continued processing here. Make sure all witness statements are thorough, particularly from anyone who might have observed the Collins family or this uncle in the park previously. Mercer nodded. Already on it. I've got officers canvassing regular park goers now. The playground attendant mentioned seeing the girl with an adult male on several occasions. We're getting a description. As preparations for the raid began, Mark caught sight of Lily and her mother sitting together on the back step of the ambulance. The little girl was wrapped in a blanket despite the warm day, a precautionary measure after decontamination. While Sarah spoke with a female officer, her expression a mixture of shock and growing anger. Valerie Nunez from Child Protective Services sat nearby, occasionally making notes, but giving mother and child space to process the situation. Her approach was professional but compassionate, a difficult balance in cases involving children. Sergeant Mercer approached them, kneeling to speak with Lily at eye level. Even from a distance, Mark could see the sergeant's gentle approach, likely explaining in age-appropriate terms what was happening and what would come next. Lily nodded occasionally, her small face serious but no longer frightened. Mark caught fragments of their conversation as he prepared to leave with Rex. Brave girl to help us. Not your fault at all. Keeping other kids safe by telling us. This case had begun with a child's innocent request to pet a police dog, but it was rapidly expanding into something much larger, a hidden operation that might have continued undetected if not for that chance encounter. The ramifications were still unfolding, rippling outward to touch lives across the community. As Mark prepared to join the tactical team, he gave Rex an appreciative pat. "Good boy," he murmured. "You may have saved that little girl from something much worse." Rex responded with the alert focus that made him an exceptional K-9 officer, already preparing for the next phase of what was becoming one of the most significant cases of their partnership. "Officer Reynolds?" A small voice called out as he was about to leave. Mark turned to see Lily, still wrapped in her blanket, looking at him with solemn eyes. Sarah stood beside her, a protective hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Lily," Mark responded, approaching them but keeping Rex at a slight distance. "Is Rex still mad at me?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Mark smiled reassuringly. Rex was never mad at you, Lily. He was just doing his job, telling me that something wasn't right. He's actually a hero, and so are you for helping us understand what was happening. Lily considered this for a moment, then nodded with the gravity only a child can muster for adult matters they don't fully comprehend. Will you tell him I said thank you? I absolutely will, Mark promised, touched by the child's resilience. Sarah Collins met his eyes, her expression a complex mixture of gratitude, fear, and determination. Officer, what happens now? To us, I mean. Mark chose his words carefully. Ms. Nunez from Child Protective Services will stay with you while we investigate further. If you and your husband weren't involved in your brother-in-law's activities, there's no reason you can't remain together as a family. The most important thing now is to be completely honest with the officers taking your statement. Sarah nodded, squeezing her daughter's shoulder. I had no idea. I swear I didn't know what he was doing in there. Her voice broke slightly. My husband is going to be devastated. He looked up to Dean, was grateful for his help with the bills. One step at a time, Mark advised gently. Right now, focus on Lily and on providing as much information as you can. As he walked away, leading Rex toward their patrol vehicle, Mark felt the weight of what lay ahead. The raid on the Collins residence would likely be just the beginning. If their suspicions were correct, this case would expand to include suppliers, distributors, and possibly other manufacturing locations. What waited for them at 1482 Oakwood Drive remained to be seen. But whatever secrets the garage held were about to be exposed to the light of day. The innocent encounter in the park had set in motion a chain of events that would affect not just the Collins family, but potentially the entire community. Mark checked his watch as he secured Rex in the vehicle. 20 minutes until the tactical briefing. 20 minutes to prepare for what might be the most significant operation of his career so far. All because a little girl wanted to pet his dog on a sunny afternoon in the park. The investigation had only just begun, and its full scope was yet to be revealed. But one thing was certain. Nothing would be the same for anyone involved after today. The tactical briefing room at the station hummed with focused energy. 14 officers in various stages of tactical gear reviewed floor plans and photographs projected on the wall screen. Detective Ortiz stood at the front, pointer in hand, his normally calm demeanor now charged with the intensity that came before a high-risk operation. 1482 Oakwood Drive, he announced, tapping the screen where a modest two-story home appeared. Single-family residence, detached two-car garage with what appears to be a recent addition at the rear, approximately 200 square feet, not visible from the street. Property records show the renovation permit was filed 4 months ago, listing the purpose as home workshop. Mark sat near the front, Rex lying attentively at his feet. He studied the satellite view of the property, the garage positioned at the end of a long driveway, partially obscured by mature oak trees. The neighborhood was middle-class suburban, the kind where people generally minded their own business, especially during working hours when most residents would be away. Our primary target is Dean Harmon, 42, Ortiz continued, switching to a DMV photo of a thin-faced man with receding brown hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Former pharmaceutical lab technician with specific expertise in chemical synthesis. Background check shows financial troubles following his divorce and termination from Meridian Pharmaceuticals 8 months ago. Lieutenant Sandra Reeves, commander of the tactical team, studied the image with narrowed eyes. Known to be armed? No registered weapons, but given the nature of the operation, we're proceeding under the assumption that he may be armed. Ortiz replied. The methamphetamine trade inherently involves significant risk and paranoia. Our surveillance team reports minimal activity at the residence today. Michael Collins, the homeowner, left for a job interview at 0900 hours and has not returned. No visual confirmation on Harmon's whereabouts, but a vehicle registered to him is parked in the driveway. He switched to the next slide, a schematic of the property. Based on the child's statement and our preliminary intelligence, we believe the garage is the primary location of interest. The recent addition likely houses the main production area. Entry points are limited: main garage door, side entrance, and possibly a rear exit through the addition, though this isn't visible in our satellite imagery. Lieutenant Reeves nodded, making notes on her tablet. Approach recommendations? Two-pronged, Ortiz suggested. Primary team secures the main residence first to ensure no civilians are present. Secondary team simultaneously approaches the garage. We'll use standard knock and announce protocol unless intelligence changes before execution. Mark raised his hand. Sir, given Rex's alert on the residue from the child's hands, I recommend having hazmat on immediate standby. If this is indeed a production facility, we could be looking at significant chemical hazards. Ortiz nodded in agreement. Already arranged. They'll stage 1 block away, ready to move in once we've secured the scene. He turned to the assembled team. I cannot overemphasize the potential hazards here. If this operation matches the chemical signatures we've been tracking, they're using modified production methods that involve highly volatile compounds. Standard meth lab precautions apply, but with heightened awareness. The briefing continued with detailed assignment of positions, communication protocols, and contingency plans. Mark would join the secondary team approaching the garage, with Rex's detection capabilities potentially valuable for locating hidden materials or warning of chemical dangers. 45 minutes later, the tactical convoy moved through the streets with deliberate normalcy. No lights, no sirens, nothing to alert potential lookouts. They staged on adjacent streets, communicating via secure radio channels as the final preparations were made. Mark checked Rex's protective booties, designed to shield his sensitive paws from potential chemical exposure. The German Shepherd remained calm but alert, sensing the heightened focus of his handler. You ready for this, buddy? Mark murmured, securing his own tactical vest. Lieutenant Reeves's voice came through the radio. All units in position. Execute on my mark in 3, 2, 1, go. The operation unfolded with the practiced precision of extensive training. The primary team approached the main house, while Mark, Rex, and 4 other officers moved swiftly toward the garage. Detective Ortiz coordinated from a mobile command post, monitoring both teams' progress. Officer Jensen, leading the garage team, positioned himself beside the side entrance, warrant in hand. Police, search warrant. Open the door. His voice carried the authoritative projection they'd all practiced countless times. Silence. He repeated the announcement, then nodded to Officer Ramirez, who used the battering ram to breach the door with a controlled strike. The door gave way with surprising ease, almost as if it hadn't been properly secured. Police, show yourself! Jensen called as they entered, weapons at the ready. The interior of the garage was dimly lit, the windows covered with heavy black material that blocked outside view. The air held a sharp chemical odor that made Mark's nose burn despite his protective mask. Rex's training kicked in immediately. He moved with heightened alertness, his body language signaling the presence of substances he was trained to detect. The front section of the garage contained ordinary items: tools hanging on pegboards, storage boxes stacked against walls, a workbench with various projects in stages of completion. It looked like any hobbyist's workspace, meticulously organized. But as they moved toward the rear addition, the nature of the space changed dramatically. A heavy plastic curtain separated the areas, and beyond it lay a sophisticated laboratory setup that exceeded even their prepared expectations. "Command, this is Jensen. We've got a confirmed lab, and it's extensive." His voice held the controlled tension of someone witnessing something far beyond the norm. No sign of the suspect yet. Glass beakers, professional-grade heating elements, ventilation equipment, digital scales, and chemical storage containers lined the walls and filled multiple workstations. Unlike the crude setups often found in amateur operations, this laboratory reflected professional knowledge and significant investment. "Reynolds, keep Rex back until we've cleared the entire space," Jensen ordered, recognizing the potential dangers to the K-9 officer. Mark acknowledged, maintaining his position while the team methodically cleared each section of the converted garage. Rex remained at heel, though his training had him on high alert. The environment was saturated with substances he was trained to identify. "Rear area clear," came the report from Officer Ramirez. "Storage closet clear," added Officer Wilson. Then, from Officer Chen, "Command, we have a laptop open and running. Appears to contain formulas and production schedules. Also, multiple burner phones." "Suspect Harmon is not on premises," Jensen confirmed after the final areas were checked. "Garage is secure, but we have a significant hazardous material situation." Detective Ortiz's voice came through the radio. "Main residence is also clear. No occupants present. Hold positions and maintain perimeter. Hazmat is moving in." As the hazmat team entered in their protective gear, Mark took in the full scope of what they'd discovered. This wasn't just a meth lab. It was a sophisticated operation that suggested professional knowledge, significant funding, and a scale of production that would supply far beyond local users. "Reynolds," Ortiz called as he entered the garage, his expression grim behind his protective mask. "I need Rex to do a sweep once Hazmat gives us the all-clear for K-9 entry. We need to know if there are hidden compartments or storage areas we're missing." The Hazmat team worked methodically, testing air quality and identifying chemicals. Their team leader approached Ortiz after the initial assessment. "Detective, we're looking at a major operation here. Professional-grade equipment, proper ventilation systems, someone knew exactly what they were doing. We've identified precursors for methamphetamine production, but also some compounds that are unusual." "Unusual how?" Ortiz asked. "There are modified chemical pathways here, not standard meth production. Some of these compounds are typically seen in pharmaceutical research, not street drug manufacturing. We'll need to get samples back to the lab, but I'd say this matches the chemical signatures you've been tracking in those street samples." Ortiz nodded grimly. "Exactly what we suspected. This isn't just about quantity, they're modifying the product itself." After Hazmat established a safe working protocol, Mark was given clearance to work with Rex. The German Shepherd moved through the space with focused precision, alerting on several containers and then, significantly, on a section of flooring near the rear wall. "He's got something here," Mark called, watching Rex's behavior. "This is a strong alert." The tactical team carefully removed a workbench to reveal what appeared to be an ordinary section of concrete flooring. But closer inspection showed subtle seams around a 3-foot square. "Hidden access point," Jensen observed. "Likely a storage area beneath the floor." With proper precautions, they lifted the concealed trapdoor to reveal a small storage space containing waterproof containers. Inside were vacuum-sealed packages of crystalline substance, bundles of cash, and several notebooks filled with handwritten formulas and calculations. "Command, we've got product and currency," Jensen reported. "Preliminary estimate on the product is approximately 20 kilos. Cash appears to be in excess of $100,000. As the evidence collection continued, Mark stepped outside for a moment, removing his mask to get some fresh air. The suburban street continued its normal afternoon routine. A mail carrier delivered packages a few houses down. A woman walked her dog on the opposite sidewalk, casting curious glances at the police vehicles. The contrast between the ordinary neighborhood and the sophisticated drug operation they'd uncovered was jarring. Detective Ortiz joined him outside, his face grave. "We've got a bigger problem, Reynolds. Harmon is in the wind, and based on what we're finding inside, he's not working alone. This operation has connections to something larger, possibly the network we've been trying to identify for months." "The Collins family?" Mark asked. "Still being interviewed. Initial assessment suggests they were unwitting participants. The husband legitimately believed his brother-in-law was working on startup business projects. Financial records show Harmon paying rent for the garage space, plus contributing to household expenses." Ortiz looked back at the garage, where evidence technicians were now photographing and cataloging the lab components. "What we've uncovered here is just the production facility. The distribution network, the supply chain, the financial backing, that's all still out there." Mark nodded, understanding the implications. "And Harmon?" "We've issued an APB, frozen his known accounts. But given the sophistication of this operation, I'd be surprised if he doesn't have contingency plans and resources we don't know about." Ortiz checked his phone as it buzzed with an incoming message. Traffic cameras caught his vehicle heading east on Highway 16 about 40 minutes ago. He's running. The investigation had shifted from a single suspect to a networked operation with unknown reach. What had begun with a little girl petting a police dog had uncovered a sophisticated drug manufacturing operation that would lead to one of the department's most complex investigations. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the suburban landscape, Mark watched the methodical processing of the scene. This was just the beginning. The ripple effects would continue to spread to the Collins family, to the community, to the broader network they had yet to identify. Rex sat attentively at his side, his job well done but far from over. There would be other locations to search, other suspects to track. The partnership between Officer and K9 had proven its value today in ways neither could have anticipated when they set out on routine patrol that morning. "Good work today," Ortiz said, breaking into Mark's thoughts. "Both of you." He glanced down at Rex with rare approval. "This case just became the department's top priority. I want you and Rex assigned to the task force effective immediately." Mark nodded, accepting both the compliment and the assignment with professional pride. "We're ready, sir." The garage door rolled up as Hazmat prepared to bring out the first containers of evidence, revealing the full laboratory setup to the fading daylight. Neighbors had begun to gather at the perimeter established by patrol officers, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief that such an operation had existed in their quiet community. This case would test everything Mark had learned in his career, his investigative skills, his partnership with Rex, his understanding of human nature. But as he watched the evidence of Dean Harmon's operation being cataloged and removed, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than any he'd experienced before. The investigation had only just begun, but they had struck a significant blow today. Whatever came next, they were ready. 1 week after the raid, the conference room at the Central Precinct had transformed into the nerve center of what was now officially designated Operation Chemical Reaction. The walls were covered with photographs, timelines, and connection charts mapping the expanding investigation. Detective Ortiz stood at the head of the table, addressing the 12-member task force assembled from various departments: narcotics, financial crimes, and tactical units. Dean Harmon remains at large, Ortiz began, tapping the suspect's photograph on the central board. Last confirmed sighting was at a gas station near Ridgecrest, approximately 180 miles east of here. The night of our raid, he abandoned his vehicle in the station parking lot and appears to have been picked up by another party. We've been unable to identify the second vehicle due to the station's outdated security cameras. Mark sat near the window, a case file open before him, Rex resting at his feet. The past week had been a whirlwind of evidence processing, witness interviews, and coordinating with other agencies as the case expanded beyond their jurisdiction. Lab analysis confirms what we suspected, Ortiz continued, gesturing to the chemical breakdown displayed on a screen. The methamphetamine being produced is of exceptional purity, 94% compared to the typical 70–80% found in street product. More significantly, it contains chemical modifications that enhance potency while reducing some of the immediate side effects that typically limit user consumption. Lieutenant Reeves frowned. So users can take more without the typical warning signs of overdose? Precisely, confirmed Dr. Elaine Winters, the department's forensic chemist. The slender woman adjusted her glasses as she elaborated. It's a sophisticated modification that requires significant understanding of neurochemistry. Users experience the euphoric effects without the immediate cardiovascular symptoms that might otherwise cause them to limit their intake. The long-term damage remains the same, possibly worse, but the user doesn't experience the warning signs. It's brilliantly sinister, added Agent Carla Mendoza from the DEA, who had joined the task force 3 days after the raid. Create a product that feels safer to use, encouraging higher consumption while actually increasing addiction rates and long-term harm. Ortiz nodded grimly, which explains the street value. We're seeing this product commanding prices 200% higher than standard methamphetamine. Users report it as a premium experience worth the additional cost. He clicked to the next slide, showing financial records. Harmon's background in pharmaceutical research gave him the knowledge, but not the resources for an operation of this scale. The equipment in that garage represents an investment of at least $200,000. His financial records show no source for that kind of capital. So he has backers, Mark observed. Someone financing the operation. Exactly. And that's where the Collins family connection becomes relevant, Ortiz replied, clicking to a photograph of Michael Collins, the homeowner and brother-in-law of their fugitive suspect. Michael Collins has been fully cooperating. His statement appears genuine. He believed Harmon was developing legitimate business projects related to his pharmaceutical background. The detective displayed bank records on the screen. Collins lost his engineering job 9 months ago when his company downsized. 3 months of unemployment left the family facing possible foreclosure. Then Harmon appears, offering to rent the garage space for his startup and contributing significantly to household expenses. Perfect cover, Agent Mendoza noted. Financial desperation creates the opportunity. Family connection provides the trust factor. Collins wouldn't question his brother-in-law's activities too closely if it meant keeping a roof over his family's head. Mark thought back to Sarah Collins and her daughter Lily, the unwitting catalysts for the entire investigation. How are they doing? He asked. The Collins family. Ortiz's expression softened slightly, adjusting as well as can be expected. Child Protective Services has concluded they were not knowingly involved. Michael Collins started a new job this week. Ironically, the interview he was attending the day of our raid panned out. Sarah is cooperating fully with our investigation, though the betrayal by her brother has hit her hard. He paused, checking his notes. Lily is receiving counseling as a precautionary measure, though she appears to be resilient. She's asked about Rex several times. Mark smiled slightly at this. The connection between the child and his canine partner had begun the entire case. "What about Harmon's ex-wife?" asked Detective Sofia Jimenez from Financial Crimes. "Any connection there?" "We interviewed her extensively," Ortiz replied. "Melissa Harmon divorced Dean 2 years ago after his increasingly erratic behavior. She appears to have no knowledge of his criminal activities and limited contact with him since the divorce. Their financial separation was complete. No joint accounts, properties, or ongoing entanglements." The meeting continued with updates from various team members. The financial investigation had uncovered several shell companies potentially connected to the operation's funding. Street-level narcotics officers reported changes in local distribution patterns as dealers adjusted to the sudden disappearance of the premium product from the market. "Our primary objectives remain locating Harmon and identifying his financial backers," Ortiz concluded. "The sophistication of this operation suggests connections to larger networks, possibly international. The chemical precursors included compounds that are tightly regulated domestically, but more accessible through certain overseas markets." As the meeting adjourned, Mark remained behind, reviewing the evidence photos from the garage laboratory. Something had been nagging at him since the raid. A detail that seemed out of place, but that he couldn't quite identify. "Still here, Reynolds?" Ortiz asked, returning to collect his files. "Something's been bothering me about the lab setup," Mark admitted. "It was too perfect." Ortiz raised an eyebrow. "Too perfect?" "Everything was organized with extreme precision, labeled, categorized, documented. That level of organization isn't typical of even high-end drug operations. It was more like a research facility," Ortiz finished, nodding slowly. "I had the same thought. The notebooks we recovered read more like scientific research journals than production records. Harmon wasn't just manufacturing, he was experimenting, documenting results, refining his process." Mark spread out several photos on the table. "Look at his workstation. Multiple iterations of formulas, systematic testing protocols. This wasn't just about production volume. He was developing something specific." Ortiz leaned in, studying the images with renewed interest. "Which raises the question. Was this operation primarily about profit? Or was the profit simply funding his research? And if it's research, what's the ultimate goal?" Mark added. The question hung in the air between them, opening new and unsettling possibilities about the true nature of what they'd uncovered. 3 days later, Mark and Rex were conducting a training exercise in a warehouse district when the call came through from Ortiz. "Reynolds, we've got a potential lead on Harmon. A pharmacy was broken into last night in Millfield, about 60 miles north. Security footage shows a suspect matching Harmon's description. More importantly, the only items taken were specific chemicals. Nothing with street value, but compounds that could be used in his modified production process." "You think he's setting up a new lab?" Mark asked, already heading toward his vehicle with Rex following attentively. "Possibly. Millfield PD is coordinating with us. I want you and Rex up there immediately. If Harmon's establishing a new location, Rex's detection capabilities could be crucial. Within the hour, Mark and Rex were on the highway heading north, the German Shepherd sitting alertly in his specialized compartment. The landscape gradually changed from urban sprawl to rolling countryside dotted with small communities. The kind of areas where a newcomer might be noticed, but where sufficient distance between properties could provide the privacy needed for illegal operations. In Millfield, they met with local detective Paula Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who had been coordinating with Ortiz. The pharmacy break-in was professional, she explained, showing Mark the security footage in her office. Alarm system bypassed, surgical entry through a rear door, and only specific items taken. No narcotics or cash were touched, which initially confused our officers. The grainy footage showed a figure moving with purpose through the pharmacy's storage area, selecting specific containers and placing them in a duffel bag. "It's difficult to make a positive ID from this footage alone," Mark observed. "But the height and build are consistent with Harmon." Martinez nodded. What really raised flags was the specificity of the theft. Our pharmacy owner provided a complete inventory of missing items, all specialized chemicals with limited applications outside of pharmaceutical compounding. "Any leads on where he might be staying locally?" Mark asked. "We've checked hotels, motels, and short-term rentals within a 20-mile radius. Nothing under Harmon's name or the aliases your department provided." Martinez spread a map on her desk. "However, we've had reports of unusual activity at an abandoned farm property about 8 miles outside town. Local teenagers who use the place for parties reported seeing lights and a vehicle there 2 nights ago." Mark studied the map. The property was isolated, accessible by a single dirt road, with the nearest neighbor over a mile away. Perfect location for a temporary lab setup. "My thoughts exactly," Martinez agreed. "We were planning to check it out, but when your detective called about the pharmacy connection, we decided to wait for your K9 unit. If there are chemicals on site, we wanted expert detection capabilities before entering." Within 30 minutes, they had assembled a small tactical team and were approaching the farm property with caution. The main house was a weathered 2-story structure that had clearly been abandoned for years. Windows broken, porch sagging, roof partially collapsed. A large barn stood about 50 yards behind the house, its red paint faded to a dull rust color. They established a perimeter, observing the property for signs of activity. No vehicles were visible, but fresh tire tracks on the dirt road suggested recent access. "Thermal imaging shows no heat signatures in the main house," reported one of the Millfield officers. "But there's something in the barn. A small heat source consistent with equipment rather than a person." Mark prepared Rex for the search, fitting him with his protective booties and vest. "We'll approach the barn first," he advised. "If Harmon has set up a temporary lab, that's the most likely location." The team moved forward with practiced precision. As they neared the barn, Rex's behavior changed. His posture became more alert, his movements more deliberate. Mark recognized the signs immediately. His partner had detected something. "Rex has a hit," he informed the team quietly. "Proceed with caution, possible chemical hazards." The barn doors were secured with a new padlock, incongruous on the otherwise dilapidated structure. The tactical team breached the entry with controlled force, sweeping into the dim interior with weapons ready. "Police, show yourself," called the Millfield tactical leader. No response came from within the cavernous space. Dust motes danced in the beams of light from their flashlights as they swept the area. The barn was largely empty, except for a section in the far corner, where a makeshift workstation had been established on old wooden tables. "Clear," came the calls from various team members as they checked the hayloft and storage rooms. Mark approached the workstation with Rex, who was now giving clear alert signals. The setup was minimal compared to the sophisticated lab they'd found in the garage, but the components were similar: heating elements, glass beakers, digital scales, and various chemical containers. "He was here," Mark confirmed. "Recently, too." He pointed to a coffee cup with liquid still warm enough to create faint wisps of steam. Detective Martinez examined the workstation carefully. "Looks like he left in a hurry. Some of these processes appear to have been abandoned mid-operation." Mark surveyed the scene, trying to reconstruct what had happened. "He must have been alerted somehow. Maybe he has police scanners, or..." His eyes caught on something tucked beneath one of the tables, a small blinking device. "Everyone back. Potential explosive device." The team retreated immediately, moving to safe positions outside the barn while their explosives expert approached the device with caution. After careful examination, the expert called the all clear. "It's not a bomb. It's a remote notification system, essentially a motion detector connected to a cellular transmitter. Anyone enters the barn, it sends an alert to a linked phone." "So he knew we were coming," Martinez concluded grimly. "Probably had enough warning to clear out before we arrived." Mark nodded, the implications clear. He's becoming more sophisticated in his countermeasures. The question is, where did he go? And did he take his production capabilities with him? A thorough search of the barn revealed that while some equipment remained, key components and chemicals were missing, likely packed up when Harmon fled. They found no personal items, no documentation, nothing to indicate his next destination. As the evidence technicians processed the scene, Mark stepped outside with Rex, surveying the abandoned farm. The case was evolving, becoming more complex with each development. What had begun as a drug manufacturing investigation was revealing layers of sophistication that suggested something beyond typical narcotics production. His phone rang, Ortiz calling for an update. "He was definitely here," Mark reported. "Set up a temporary operation but cleared out just before we arrived. He's got counter-surveillance measures in place now." "That's consistent with our latest intelligence," Ortiz replied, his voice tense. "We've been analyzing the research notes from his original lab. Reynolds, this goes deeper than we thought. The chemical modifications he's developing appear to have applications beyond recreational use. Some of the formulations suggest potential weapons applications, compounds that could be weaponized for mass effect." Mark felt a chill that had nothing to do with the afternoon breeze. "You're saying this could be about terrorism?" "We don't have enough to make that determination yet," Ortiz cautioned. "But we've brought in Homeland Security as a precaution. Whatever Harmon's ultimate objective, it's clear he's not just a sophisticated drug manufacturer. He's a man with a specific mission, significant resources, and the expertise to create substances far more dangerous than street drugs." As Mark ended the call, he looked down at Rex, who sat attentively at his side, unaware of the expanding implications of their investigation. What had begun with a simple alert in a park had led them into something far darker and more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The hunt for Dean Harmon had become a race against time, with stakes that potentially extended far beyond the boundaries of their jurisdiction. Whatever the man's ultimate plan, they needed to find him, and soon.